Hello there. The mainstream press won't tell you what's going on in Russia right now because Putin is doing the far right thing of kicking their unwanted demographic out of the country with some urgency. The Russians suffered a horrific terrorist attack on the Crocus City Hall on the 22nd of March, which resulted in 144 deaths and 382 injured. But, unlike the West, Russia has decided not to respond with singing Kumbaya around the campfire, nor insisting on Facebook filters, emojis and the like, while sitting around supinely waiting for the next attack. No, they've been a lot more robust. And it goes far beyond the highly questionable, physically robust treatment of those suspects captured so soon after the event, where at least 4 of them are said to be from the 96% Muslim country of Tajikistan, with some having connections with the Islamic State Khorasan province in south-central Asia. No, it goes much wider than just that. Despite trying to hang the blame for the attack on the Ukrainian government for obvious reasons, the Russian authorities have started massive raids and deportations of migrants. The New York Times says the main suspects in a deadly assault near Moscow were from Tajikistan. Now many other Tajiks who fill jobs in Russia's wartime economy are being deported and harassed. According to other reports, thousands were arrested and hundreds had already been deported within days of the attack. And many were fleeing of their own accord due to the fears of increased Islamophobia after the Crocus City Hall attack. Those Russians don't hang about, do they? None of this Western due process in their minds. But where's the outcry from our human rights lobby? What of the condemnation of collective punishment for the actions of a small minority? Or is it because it's the Russians doing it, with no chance of pointing at Jews, maybe? Anyway, here's what Medusa.io reported a few days ago. On March the 29th, the human rights group Department 1 reported that St. Petersburg police were conducting a large-scale operation called Anti-Migrant. City courts ordered the deportation of 466 people. The following day, Moscow police raided locations in the city and surrounding region, according to Agentsvo. In Belgorod, officers raided a mosque, while in Samara, police went to 2,080 locations, after which 105 people were deported. And it gets worse. One lawyer who works with migrants told CNN, "The police are trying to pretend that they are actively fighting ethnic crime and preventing terrorist attacks. Actually, they're robbing migrants. I have dozens of complaints about migrants being stopped by police, and the police have stolen whatever they like." And according to Tajikistan's Deputy Minister of Labour, more of their citizens are returning from Russia rather than going in. And reports say similar checks on migrants are being made across other Russian cities. The Moscow Times reports, authorities in St. Petersburg have been deporting migrants en masse in the week since the deadly attack on a Moscow region concert hall, the legal rights group Pervy Otdel said Friday. More than 64 foreigners were deported from the city's Vyborgsky district on Thursday alone, the NGO said, citing one of its unidentified lawyers. With that unnamed lawyer also saying, temporary detention centres for foreign citizens are packed, surrounded by special vehicles and buses heading to the airport. And the Moscow Times continued. Bailiffs reportedly refer to St. Petersburg's mass deportations as Operation Anti-Migrant, with raids targeting local hostels and apartments. Similar raids were reported in Moscow and other Russian cities. There is also a report that the words Russia for Russians is on the rise. and one person attacked by ultra-nationalists was met with a 1930s and 40s German-style salute. Now, the vast majority of these migrants are in Russia to work, and with the mobilisation for war, those foreign workers are in much demand. The unemployment rate in Russia is only 2.9%. Well, the official rate anyway. So it already has a very tight employment market. Good news for the Ukrainians, whether or not they were actually involved. Anyway, this all sounds very heavy-handed by the Russian authorities, doesn't it? It smacks of the post-Second World War attack by the Japanese on Pearl Harbor, after which the US authorities rounded up and interned anyone who looked remotely Japanese or had any connection with them. So isn't it wonderful that we in the UK and the wider Western world these days live in a modern, open and tolerant society where the people and their governments would never ever countenance such a response? Except those who populate what the woke left like to brand as the far right, of course. So it must come as comfort to us all that we have the Council of Europe and its European Convention on Human Rights that is protecting the human rights and the right to remain of all those who come to live here, whether by legal or illegal means, and whether they engage in legal or illegal activity. Warms the cockles of your heart, doesn't it? And isn't it marvellous that while the ECHR writes reports on how bad our treatment of newcomers is in the UK and has its judges ground our deportation flights, it also breathes not a whisper against the massive attack on the human right of free speech occurring in Scotland right now. Yes, this assault on one of the bedrocks of democracy, the right to the freedom of expression, is not being robustly defended by the ECHR judges. Maybe they don't want us discussing stuff like this, together with what's going on in Russia. Who knows? I mean, if the far right in the West got their hands on the right to free speech, anything could happen, couldn't it? And how about all those TERFs in Scotland? Surely they must be silenced. But doesn't the right to free speech apply to everyone equally? Or just those that are on the side of certain people and their certain rights? So if there is any hint that the right to free speech is being applied lopsidedly, surely the lawyers at the Council of Europe would be writing their reports on it, telling the world how badly the Scottish Government was applying its new hate laws, for example. Hate laws that are very controversial and have been in the pipeline for over 2 years. But no, not a squeak it seems. Which might lead the cynical amongst us to the conclusion that the Council of Europe is not that much bothered about the human right to the freedom of expression in the West, because it stifles those on the far right who might criticise the woke progressive agenda. But that could only be of concern if it is believed that somehow most people had a tendency toward what are deemed by our woke progressive masters as far-right views. You know, the majority.